Welcome to the European Law Unbound podcast series. I'm Maria Bartel, Professor of Transnational Private Law at the University of Amsterdam and the co-president pro tempore of the European Law Unbound Society. This podcast series was recorded in Prague during our inaugural conference in September 25, and we are thrilled to share it with you. In these episodes, you will discover fascinating law in Europe research from our many participants brought to life with their fresh impressions and insights from the conference itself. We hope you will enjoy these conversations as we look ahead to our second annual conference coming to Lisbon in September 26. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn to keep up with the latest news, updates and developments from the European Law Unbound Society. We are just getting started and we'd love to have you along for the journey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of our podcast. My name is Michal Ria. I'm having a great guest here, Armin von Bogdandy, Professor Armin von Bogdandy. Welcome.
Welcome. Very glad to be here.
And we are shooting during the conference ELU Prague, so it's the end of the September 2025. So if you are listening sometimes later, you know when we are doing it. Yeah. So, welcome to our podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. You are. It's a really amazing opportunity to meet you because I always read your papers, and this is the second time we met actually, and first time we are having a conversation, and we are meeting in Prague at ELU conference, which for many might be a little strange to have such big event in. We are very sensitive about saying Eastern Europe, so Central Europe, Middle Europe.
I'm very much with you. I think it's very important to distinguish Central Europe and Eastern Europe, and even the people from Romania and Bulgaria, they are making that distinction by showing, and that is issue of the diversity that we were just discussing. So one thing is that you have to consider the diversity that brings Central Europe, and then there's a different diversity that comes with Eastern Europe, with Romania and Bulgaria. So I think it is a very helpful distinction. And I think with having the initial conference of ELU here in Prague, it shows that it is central, right? That is the very point.
We become central a capital of European law for 3 days.
I think that's and it will be remembered in that way. I think the society is starting very successfully, and we have seen that the other societies that Joseph Weiler has started have become a huge success. European Society of International Law and the International Society for Public Law. So it's the same idea, but it has evolved. I see how it is. It has evolved. Both other have become so important. So it is likely that this society will be important, and we remember. For the other two, Florence. Now this time it is Prague, and it shows how Europe has evolved. And I think with all the problems, I think that it's positive, and we should see it that this is something positive.
Many people ask me why there is a new society, because there is so many European law societies already. So why there is a need for ELU to exist?
There are not so many European law societies. Actually, that is something that was missing, and I felt that deeply. So we have the FIDE, la Fédération Internationale pour le Droit Européen, but that is it's too much institution-centered, and it is too far away from academic thought and academic invention. So it has an important role, but that is not what we need. And what we need is what you see here in the place. Now you have all these young people who are enthusiastic, and they are trying to find out new ways and trying out new things and tricks. And that is something that was missing. And the European Society, the International Society of Public Law, it was some venue for that, even with the local chapters. I remember the founding of the Central European chapter of ICON-S, and it was a very important moment. And of course, there was a lot of EU law. So topic-wise, it could have been part of this conference.
It's not that inclusive for private lawyers.
So that is one. So the private law was missing, and that is very important. That we start learning to talk with the private lawyers, because I don't know what it is like in the Czech Republic, but in German academia, it's very hard to have a meaningful academic conversation with people from private law. There are very few people in private law with whom you can have a meaningful academic conversation. Of course, that is a drama, and that is something to be overcome. And perhaps this society might help in bridging that gap. So that is another reason why there is a good reason to have this society.
Is there any connection with the fact that we are facing, after 70 years, war in the continent, and also if we look over the ocean, the Euro-Atlantic ties are much weaker than it used to be? So that's the moment when the society is starting?
Well, that's...
I know,
so
it's more geopolitical.
So the idea of European society is very dear to me. And I have to say, when I finished my first book on that topic in the late summer 21, I was not... So I had ideas what might happen to bring that forward. And of course, one thing that I was thinking as something very far away is aggressive Russia, and Russia waging war against Europe. So that was a hypothesis that I had at the time, which might very much accelerate.
You were a prophet.
And yeah, so we have had a number of, so I think, so European society is in the treaty. It has been thought up by the people who wrote the constitutional treaty. And I think it is now making its way, and the causes for that are unfortunate. But I think they very much strengthen a phenomenon that we might call European society. And I think we saw it yesterday in the evening panel. You know, once that Antoine Boucher brought the concept out, everybody used it, because I think it is very helpful to grasp our current situation. And I think that is what this meeting is for. You know, we have to come to terms with our situation, and that takes also crafting and developing concepts. So for that reason, I think, of course, Central European countries are more threatened than the more Western ones. So here we feel that even more strongly. So I think that is another reason why it makes sense to have it here.
Do you think that there is still a huge divide between, let's say, a lot of people are still using the term the new member states, but it's 21 years already since, for example, the Czech Republic joined. So do you think that there is still maybe divide in how we are understanding the law in countries which, for example, had an experience with a communism regime?
One of the main points that comes with European society is to stop thinking just in cleavages and difference between member states, but to think of cleavages and difference within one society. So you have different modes of thinking of EU law, but that you find in all countries. And then you have a layer of people, or a group of people who try to speak to each other, and they're very integrated. And that is the group that you find here. You see that they are coming from different traditions, but then you also have different traditions within the countries. So first of all, I think new member states doesn't make sense anymore, and I think it is offensive. We had the same phenomenon in Germany. You know, if you speak of the new Länder, people get angry. And, you know, they have been full citizens for 30 years. And I think it's the same with the Central and Eastern European countries.
If I go more political, if I look on, for example, voting preferences, you can see the divide between the old or Federal Republic of Germany, as it was, the West Germany and the East Germany. You can see the preferences are quite clear in there.
You have they are different, and the majorities are different. But I think it is very important to see that you have like-minded people in all countries, and if they team up, and if they succeed in teaming up, they can form majorities, and they can form policies. So I think it is very important, if you have your mindset for some kind of policy, that you are trying to find people in other member states who think likewise in order to advance your policies. And I have the feeling that people that are often labeled as populists, they are better in that job than many of the people who are more from the liberal camp.
So you are basically trying to recreate the Europeans who created the coal and steel community, because those people, I think, were more Europeans than maybe national politics.
I wouldn't dare to say so. So they were in a very different situation, and they came from a very different experience. So the people who started that, they have lived the war, and I think, and the reactions were very diverse. It's very interesting to see that at my institute. So the first two directors, Bilfinger and then Mosler. So Bilfinger reacted to World War II by proposing that the Allies should do with Germany what they had done with Napoleonic France or post-Napoleonic France. So re-establish the concert of the five big powers. So that was his idea. So no change in the order of sovereign statehood, and to have that type of concert re-established with a balance of power. So the leading idea was the balance of power, and then came Mosler, and Mosler opted for European Federation. So that was the same group. They just drew very different lessons from what they had experienced.
Yeah. Of course, there was also the third solution proposed by de Gaulle to disintegrate Germany into separate states.
Yeah. Well, that was off the table because of the Americans.
Yeah.
So we had the Schuman Declaration because that kind of dismembering Germany was off the table by that time. My father, when he had to go to university in 1948, people told him, study to become a veterinarian. That's the only meaningful thing that you can do in Germany, because it will be agrarian state. That was the idea in 1948. So that is how they thought Germany would have been reduced.
I'm teaching history of European integration, and a lot of students actually not really appreciate this topic, because I want to be attorney. Why should I care about what happened 70 years ago? But it's very interesting how maybe I think the expression is also in English that history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. So it's very interesting to know how, for example, today we are living through the military conflict in Ukraine, and a lot of people are discussing what should be about with the European Common Defense. And there was a European defense community proposed already, 60 years ago. And it's for me, it's really amazing the fact that they propose it, and most of the all member states actually signed the treaty, but it was not ratified. So it was stopped by one parliament, and the second, and the last one was waiting what happened in the France. And from this perspective, to create the Europeans, not just members of certain member states, it's interesting to think about it.
Yeah, of course, and I think this society is part of it. These are the educators. These are the people who are educating the people who will be formalizing most of the relationships in our societies and in our society. So if they do that with a certain European mindset, that is likely to have an impact on the perception of many people.
Yeah, that's something I really like from Joseph Weiler's lecture, when he said that your paper in average will be read by 7 or 10 people, but if you are having a class of 30 lawyers, you are affecting more lives by teaching than by doing the research.
Yeah, but though that is true, but because you have written that paper that might be read only by 7 people, you're a different educator. You're a different educator. You have a different grasp on the topic if you have thought through it in a way that you are writing a paper that you think fit for publication that is different for someone who reads it just to convey it. So even if the papers are read by few people. The kind of education that you give, I think, is a different one. Yeah.
So we are in Prague, the conference. How do you understand the Prague and the role of Prague in the Europe? Because we are city of Kafka, German Jew. We are nation of maybe do you know who was voted? He was expelled from the competition. Who was voted to be the most influential Czech, the biggest Czech in history, or Bohemian?
The most voted, the most important Czech in history.
Yeah, selected by the Czechs.
In all history.
In whole history.
Well, I would expect it's Wenceslav, no?
I think he could get in in top 10, but Charles.
Oh, then Charles IV.
Charles
yes,
IV
Charles
was
yes.
higher,
Yeah.
but actually the high support was for Jara Zimmermann, who never left because it's fictional figure, and that's the guy who actually advised to Eiffel how to build the Eiffel Tower and to Bell how to set up the telephone, and he was everywhere, but he was only the one who put it in motion. So,
but it's a real figure? Or
no,
fictional?
it's fictional one.
Okay.
But he's considered to be and I think it's a part of the charm, the Czech charm. Basically, we are making fun of ourselves by claiming that the most important Czech never lived. Actually,
well, for me it goes back far more because I'm from Heidelberg, you know, and the Heidelberg was meant to become what Berlin is today. That is to say, the main Protestant city in Germany. And it did not become that because the Prince, Frederick V, left for Prague. Creating the 30 Years War.
I was a bit surprised because I was in Heidelberg last year for the first time, and I went to the local museum or state museum, and I was looking on the lineage. I was like, oh, that's the Palatinate, okay.
Yeah, so it was. So it all started for a terrible decision that was taken in Heidelberg Castle, I think in 1622, when they decided to accept the Bohemian crown. Yeah. And they lived for Prague. So I think it somehow it
but
is
at least we become famous because of that, not only for the 30-year wars, but before that we created a tradition of defenestration, because the moment when it started was when the emperor's bureaucrats or administrators of Czech Bohemian lands were thrown out of the window.
Yeah, that's how it started. Yeah. In May 1618. Now, so that's I think it is an important moment because that is then left to the peace of Osnabrück and Münster and the modern statehood. So I think that is the first element. It also shows how central it is. Yeah.
So we are basically behind the state sovereignty. Wow, I will claim that in the lecture.
Yes, state sovereignty. So without throwing the guys out of the window, we wouldn't have state sovereignty as we know it today. At least it was a key element bringing to it.
Yeah, and
so I think that is one element. You know, if you think of Prague, it has an element with the 30 Years War. So it was the city that they absolutely wanted to have, both the Austrians and Frederick, and it is meaningful because the idea of the empire that he had in mind, you know, he was 20 years old, but there was an idea of an empire behind that move, and it would have been an empire that moved from Prague all through central Germany into France. It would have been a very different geography of Europe if that would have worked.
I think the geography is also an important part of the mentality. I know that Andrej Preuss is today organizing event on this or discussion on whether the seat of parliament and the form of the building actually affects the behavior of the MPs. And one of interesting facts which are quite often claimed about the Czechs are because the Czech Republic is encircled by the mountains. So a lot of people, we are feeling safe. We are here, and the foreigners should stay away from the on the other side of the mountains. And it's sometimes it's claimed, and it's unfortunately very common to say that we are hobbits from Lord of the Rings, and to basically the Czech Republic or Bohemia is a hobbiton. So that's also one of the reasons why we are one of the countries from former Eastern Europe or the Eastern Bloc, and which had the lowest number of mobility. So a lot of Polish, Lithuanians went for work to West, while the Czechs remain where they are. And also we are one of the most Eurosceptic nations. So, and I have to confess, when we started organization of this conference, a lot of my colleagues asked me why we should hold it.
But what does Euroscepticism mean? Does it mean leaving the European Union? Does it mean deregulating? Does it mean that certain... So what does it mean? It's a very open concept.
I think in the Czech understanding, it's more we and the others. So the others should, as I said, should remain behind the mountains outside, and they should not involve. My personal idea, it's something like and I will be very, I'm careful about the term, something like post-colonial trauma, because we were really independent as a Czechoslovakia for 20 years between the wars, and after we were part of the Eastern Bloc, before we were part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and when we Bohemia was one of the richest part of the monarchy, and when we asked to be made equal with German-speaking lands and the Hungarians, we were not listened to. So we always had some distance and resentment against the other center, which is not ours. So either it's Vienna or Moscow or Brussels.
And I think it is an important concern. I was just walking the city. I saw several very nice bookshops, and I looked into the bookshops, and I saw the books that are to be sold. And of course, with a nation of just 10 million, it is very difficult to keep a culture and that type of literary production alive. You know, you need to sell a lot of books in order to
and by the way, the Czech Republic is the country with the highest number of libraries in the world.
Yeah, I'm not surprised for the many I saw, and they were also nice. So and when it comes to the language and the language you are speaking, it's something that is very sensitive to people, and so to maintain that in a country that is surrounded by German speaking on three corners, it is a relevant concern. And for that reason, I think it's so fortunate that we all do speak, not just to end that we all do speak in our bad English. So we are all on the same page by speaking a foreign language that we are not fully comfortable with. It comes with a very high price, and that is a price that our politicians cannot speak to us as they could if it's with their native language. We also saw that yesterday evening, you know. So Jourova delivered in English, and of course, you know, she speaks English well. But of course, it would have been a totally different thing if she could deliver that so if a major politician can deliver such a talk in his or her mother tongue, and I think that is that comes with a high price. Also, how people feel connected to European institutions. So we pay a high price for that. But I think it is a price worth paying to find to look eye to eye to each other.
But I think the frangle is really, really amazing.
The
frangle.
What is frangle?
Combination of French and English. Frangle.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people claim that that's the language of Brussels. speaking both English and French. They are combining, so it's franglais.
I don't think so. I think English has won in Brussels. There's very little French still around, and I think the inflections that you have in English come from the Germans and from the people from Central and Eastern Europe. I think it's not so much from the French. And I think what we need to do is to make our declaration of linguistic independence so that we are proud of our accents and we don't try to hide them, and we are proud of our mistakes. So we have a correction program in Word that accepts all our errors. So I think that is very important. Even in academia, that we are defining our own style and make our a declaration of independence. And I think it's also when it comes to how to do legal academia. And that is because I was just wondering if the model on which we are still construing our scholarship is very much the Anglo-American and in particular the American way of doing at the elite law schools, right? That is somehow the model, and it's quite interesting to see how important US scholars are at this conference here. Yeah.
That's something some of my colleagues claim, that I'm true common law AIist.
Yeah, no. I think there's, with the topics that we are having on AI, so there's a good ground. But I think there's also something we should think about. If that type of scholarship, as it has developed at the US law schools, whether that has some relationship with the decline of the rule of law in the United States, which is so much, it goes so much faster if you compare what's going on in the US and you compare it with Hungary. It's the US is so much more advanced. So might it be that the very doctrinal and technical way of doing law in Hungary somehow had a resistance with respect to that form of decline? I don't know, but I think it's worth something exploring.
Yes, that's true. I think the ELU platform is quite good for these explorations, and I'm very happy that we could host this conference. And thank you, Armin, for having you in our podcast.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure, and I very much hope that this society will be successful. And as I see how it has started, I'm confident that it will.
Thank you very much.